Good evening. I am Chris Thurner. I am the moderator for tonight's event. Welcome to the Candidate Forum for the St. Mary's Special Election for City Council Post number 3. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Please silence your cell phones. If you have to make a call or receive a call, please go out into the lobby to do so. Restrooms are out that back door to the lobby and then to your right. This forum provides an opportunity for civil discourse between the candidates to inform the St. Mary's voters of the choice they have to make during this special election. During the next approximately 75 minutes, candidates will have the opportunity, in rotation, to make 3-minute opening statements, 3 minutes to answer questions developed from public input, and each make a 3-minute closing statement. The timekeeper, Jeannie Strait, will signal the candidates when they have 30 seconds remaining and then when their allotted 3 minutes have expired. If necessary, the candidate will have a few seconds to complete their thought. Then, if necessary, I will ring the bell to signal that time has expired. During the forum, to maximize time for candidates' questions and answers, please refrain from applause and comment until after the candidates' final closing statements at the end of the forum. Welcome to the candidates. On my right, your far left, is Chad Ingram, Jay Marino, and Mike Wilkie. Mr. Ingram is first in the rotation. He will make the first opening statement, and then Mr. Marino will make his opening statement, and then Dr. Wilkie will make his opening statement. The first question will start with Mr. Marino, then Dr. Wilkie, then Mr. Ingram. Next question, on with Dr. Wilkie. So it'll rotate like that. Mr. Ingram, you're on.
Good evening, everybody. First and foremost, I want to thank everybody that showed up and is here in attendance. It's definitely great to see people that are concerned with what's going on in our great city of St. Mary's. One thing that we have to, is that me making noise? It's not me. I'll go ahead. We good? Okay. Let's get back to the train of thought there. Again, thank you for everybody for coming, and it's good to see people concerned with what's going on in St. Mary's. A lot of my reasons for wanting to run is I do love St. Mary's. This is the town that I was born in. Well, technically Jacksonville, but it was because they didn't want to take me to Gilman Hospital at the time to be conceived, or not conceived, but born. That's the wrong word whatsoever. But anywho, hopefully that's the worst misspeak that I have tonight. But anyways, lots of people have said they want to see people of, say, my generation or younger generation be involved with local politics, and I think it's very important to have diversity in a group of people, between generations. I feel that, people of my generation need to be involved to see what's going on, because we have a lot of exciting things going on in our city right now that we're going to be the ones seeing it through at some point, because, you're looking at certain projects and certain things going on that, have an extended life of over 20 years. So, to be involved and get more people of our generation involved is very important. And that's not to say that anybody's trying to take over. It's a matter of working well with all generations, you know, because we definitely have to have our seniors that have been plugged in and involved for a long time, but they need to share the information, pass it down. And, you know, I hope that, you know, we're able to bridge the gap and get, you know, a few more people, you know, involved that aren't currently involved. You know, things with St. Mary's that really struck my attention, you know, just I was handling some events, and you know, I've dealt with St. Mary's and maybe a neighboring city that we have here in Camden County, and it's a night and day difference. You know, you go to one of our neighboring sister cities that's, you know, just next door. Well, we'll call it Kingsland, but you know, you get a different vibe when you go to do something over there. You know, they treat you like a business partner, and they meet you in the middle. You know, they seem to be excited, very enthusiastic, and happy that you chose their town to do something in. And that's with business, that's with events, and just overall, just anything you want to get done seems a little bit easier. Now, there's a perception in St. Mary's that I'm not saying that it's totally bad, because we have a great little city, and you know, we have a lot of good things going for us. And you know, there are some people that go right in and get their permitting done, and they get, you know, everything done they need to get. But we got to shake that perception. We've got a lot of things going on, and if you get these bigger companies that are looking to bring jobs to our area, they might turn around and head the other direction if they start hearing the local vibe that's going around in the town that, you know, St. Mary's is difficult, and we need to change that and be a little more friendly, have some open arms, and be excited that somebody might want to do something here in our town.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, I got the green light now, good. As I look out over the audience, I see that probably 50% of you are people that are known to me, and obviously you know who I am. For the rest of you, on the outside chance that you don't know who I am in fact the infamous, notorious, evil, demonic, not nice Jay Marino that you've read so much about in the Tribune and Georgian over the years. The only one of those descriptors that I warmly embrace is the not nice part, and I'll tell you why. The reason I'm seen as not nice by the powers that be in both the county and in particularly in the city is that for 25 of the 30 years that I've lived here, I've been very actively involved in speaking truth to power in this city. And I've done quite a few things that those of you that haven't been here all those 30 years don't know about, that I'm quite proud of, that earned me the reputation of not being nice. And the simple fact is, you can't do what the things I've done for this community that involved putting it to people in elected office that weren't doing what they should be doing and be considered universally as nice. You just can't do it. It's not possible. And I hope that before this evening is over, I will convince some of you that using niceness as your primary, if not your sole criterion for doing your due diligence when it comes to electing council members is not a terribly good idea. If you think about it, if you go back and look at all the things that those of you that have been here for the last 30 years have seen your mayor and councils do after telling you what wonderful people they were during their campaigns, then they get on council, they're not transparent, they go back into the back room, they do things that are violative of Georgia law, like for instance, most recently, when they went into the back room for 2 years and colluded with the weasels from Radiant. That was a violation of Georgia law. Georgia law does not allow them to discuss what they discussed, but they did it. And the incredible thing is that over 30 years, every single member of council or the mayors, everybody's thought, gee, those are such nice people. Well, they might well be, but nonetheless, by having used niceness as your primary criterion, you've successively elected people again and again that smile at you, tell you how nice they are, and then they turn around and turn out to be the biggest liars that God ever created once they're on council. Okay? I see I've got how many seconds? 30? So, as the evening wears on, once I knock off my answers to some of these questions, if I've got a little time left, hopefully I can go through some of the things that I've done over the years that you might not know about. And we're fortunate enough this evening to have a truth detector here. Mr. Gordon Jackson has been here all that time, and when I tell you some of the things I've done, he'll be able to verify that they're true. Thank you.
Waiting on the light. Good evening. My name is Mike Wilkie. I'm formerly the Chief of Police for the City of St. Mary's. Of all the candidates, I've lived here the least amount of time. We've been here just 3.5 years. I came here to serve this community as the Chief of Police and concluded that service in December of this past year, and am now presenting myself as a candidate for the St. Mary's City Council. I sort of swore that I would never do this in terms of running for political office, because I said, you know, if there was someone who was a great uncle on my wife's side that got hung for being a horse thief back in the 1870s, I didn't want to know about it. And that happens in the political realm. But the reason I became a law enforcement officer over 30 years ago was that I believed that service in government is a biblical calling. It is a Romans 13 calling. And I followed that call on my life for most of my adult life. And should the good citizens of this community give the opportunity, I would like to continue that service on the City Council. Look forward to our discussions this evening. Thank you.
Our first question goes initially to Mr. Marino. The purpose of this candidate forum is to help registered voters to get to know you, the candidates, to determine who is the best person to represent them during the next 4 years. Why are you the best person for the job, and what is your top priority as a future council member?
Okay, let me just tell you a little short bio here. I'm originally from Savannah. I moved here on August the 3rd of 1993, so this coming August will be 30 years that I've been here. Beginning within practically a matter of weeks of my arrival, as the Hafers can attest, I've been deeply involved in monitoring what the City of St. Mary's government has been up to, whether it be the mayor, the council, various department heads, and so forth. When I moved here, the Brandon administration was in power, and they were absolutely, quite literally corrupt, feloniously corrupt. And I played a major role. I was one of 3 people, the then county city purchasing agent, Deborah Hayes, who later became the mayor, was feeding information to an attorney friend of mine, Ken Nelms, who then fed it to me, and I went to the press and to the public and revealed the corruption. It was just incredible. I will say we've not had a corrupt government since the Hayes administration, but we have had a government that tells you they're going to be transparent, but they're anything but that. So I think the reason I'm best for this job is that I have been very involved in holding the city government's feet to the fire. I've been the quintessential watchdog in this city for years. And when I'm on council, there will be no sneaking into the back room and colluding with weasels from Radiant at all in unlawful meetings. And why will it not be? Because when they do it, and I realize what they're doing is not in accordance with Georgia law, I will promptly roll back out to the rest of you out there in the peanut gallery and inform you that they're back there violating the law. There will be no lack of transparency when I'm on council, and if the rest of them don't like it, well, that's too bad. Because I will enforce, if I have to do it all on my lonesome, I will enforce true transparency. There won't be any more of this BS where they smile sweetly when they're campaigning and then get in there and simply lie to you. I won't allow that to happen. And in short, like I say, you know, I've got the intelligence, I've got the educational qualifications, as you see on the table out there. And I'm just deeply interested in doing this, not as an ego trip, it's just as a concerned citizen that has been one for 30 years now, and it's that simple.
That green light is precious. We want to, we don't want to miss that. Having been an employee of the city, I have a sort of an insider's perspective on a number of things. Actually, some of the comments that Mr. Reno has raised, and some of which I agree with. Our city is in trouble, and the reason that we are is because we have had a constant turnover rate of employees and personnel, and it has been exceedingly difficult for us to recruit people to come and work in our city and deliver those services. I'm going to give you a quick, for example. When we send someone to the police academy, we have to send them to the academy in Savannah. It costs us about $8,000 or $9,000 for one individual to be trained to go into law enforcement if we hire them off the street uncertified. They sign a 2-year commitment, and they can leave at the end of that with no ongoing obligation, or if they decide to just quit the business, they can leave with a 2-week notice. And we have invested thousands of dollars in that sort of situation. And that's across the board. Every department in the city is operating shorthanded, and one of the reasons is we are not being competitive in the salary compensation packages that we offer. I'd like to see that changed. And I agree with Mr. Marino that there are a number of things with which we need to increase our transparency. My thinking is that we ought to diminish the number of things that we have that are confidential. There should be less non-disclosure agreements and more open air meetings where things are discussed. I'm sure the Radiant property is going to come up shortly. We've known about that for over 2 years. You've known about that only since about last fall, and that's inappropriate because there are a lot of issues that are there. I'd like to see us develop a pistol range in town and for our people, so that we don't have to drive all the way across to almost another county to exercise our Second Amendment rights and training. And there are some other things that I would like to do to develop in our city. Thank you.
Okay, so as part of that question, to try to make it look like or why I would be the best person for the job. Youth doesn't qualify me whatsoever, but when I use the word youth, I don't feel young. I might be a little younger than some of the others that are existing council members now. But I do have life experience, and I've been in, primarily sales, but sales leadership and private business. We have a local business that we've recently opened. I've been involved in a lot of things, and that involved team building, leadership, having people come together for a common goal. I've been able to communicate with people of all generations, younger and senior, and I feel that I can work with just about anybody. Now, that said, when it's time to make a tough call, tough decision, I've been capable, which is why I've been able to achieve the things that I have thus far. Now, one thing that, both gentlemen have stated so far, I agree with both their main points they've made. And, I do want to see better communication, with the city and transparency. But I also want to make sure it's meaningful to where we can find new creative ways to get more people involved and want to know. We just had a big change with our trash collection service, and this has been going on for a long time, and most everybody that I see that's gotten upset didn't seem to care until after they got that first bill in January, after it was too late, and we'd already switched over the service and saw the new shiny trucks drive around. Nobody cared. They got new trash cans. Oh, great, I got a new trash can. But nobody really seemed to really open their eyes till they got a bill that said it was, significantly more than it was, the previous month. So trying to find ways to effectively and meaningfully communicate with everyone, and as a council member, I'm not going to have every answer, and no council member should have every answer. And even worse, we shouldn't pretend to have all the answers, and that's not the way I see the position of a council member being. I intend to have an open ear to the public, try to demonstrate and make decisions based off the majority or will of the people. That's very important to me, is making sure that you do have that open ear so that, the public can be involved, but trying to find ways where it's meaningful to bring more people, because the people that are involved in this room right here, this is far from a majority of St. Mary's. I believe in the November election locally for this candidate forum, we probably had roughly 200 views of this thing online. So, you're talking, 30 people in the room at best, 30 to 40, let's call it, and then maybe 200 people. And that's not a lot of people that are trying to like really check out the candidates and what they stand for. So just finding that meaningful communication is huge.
I think we're ready to move to the new question.
Thank you. Dr. Wilkie is correct. He's going to be the first one up on the second question.
You are seeing these questions on the overhead. They are being handed to us as we go. So we've not seen the questions. Actually, you're seeing them before we are.
That is correct. Thank you, Dr. Wilkie. A council person is a representative of all the people, not a champion of a special interest group or a narrow perspective. If elected, during your decision process, what methods and disciplines will you engage to develop and sponsor a balanced view regarding city ordinances, budgets, projects, and issues? Dr. Wilkie.
I can give an example of that I changed when I became the chief of police as part of our promotional process. Police departments typically are pretty narrow in their thinking and want to just have things just so. I'm very community-minded and believe that we should practice community policing, that sort of philosophy of our law enforcement service delivery. And as an example of that, in some of the last promotions that we had within our police department, I asked citizens of the community to come and sit in on the panel to give us their perspective for persons who were up for promotions. We had someone from the education community, we had someone from the business community, and then we had just a citizen who had no particular tie along that line, but just your average Joe. They brought a wonderful perspective, I thought, to that process by the questions that they asked and the input that they gave. It sort of threw some of our folks a little bit off balance, to have that. But I just thought that was important. I think that it is extremely important to get community input to those sorts of things. And as to the budget, that process actually is beginning right about now for the city. All the departments should be collecting their initial budgets and preparing them for submission right now. And that process will conclude in June when those things are presented. I think that it is important to get input from the community and to solicit that input of where things are spent. A budget is not exotic to think about, but the budget is the city's plan for where it is going to go. And if the nickels and dimes are not there, the city's not going there. And so I think that it's very important to have as much input as possible. I would seek that out. And I think that that's probably enough for me to say.
So I feel like when I was talking before, I might have peeked ahead of this question somehow, and I kind of, touched on this a good bit on my last answer. But I'll just kind of repeat one line that I used, that, council members shouldn't have every answer, and even worse, shouldn't pretend to. That's where, trying to find the best will of the people. Now, I'm not going to pretend to have the best answers of how to get there, but I'm open to input. I always will be, always have been. And I do want to find creative ways to be able to make it meaningful, reach everyone, and try to get the best idea for what the pulse of the city is. Because, my personal opinion might not be the majority's opinion. I might be on the wrong track, and I'm okay to admit that, and to where I can accept constructive criticism and move forward, in a different direction than I may personally feel, but it might be, what the majority of our town is the pulse or heartbeat of the town is. I'm okay with that. So, I don't have too much pride to admit that I don't have all the answers, and I may be wrong sometimes, or just have a different opinion on something. But that doesn't mean that I can't, take that, constructive criticism, or can't take an outsider different opinion than mine and roll with it if that's what needs to be done. So, I guess in closing on this for, all of the city issues, I do want to find creative ways to get more people involved and make sure that we are truly doing what we need to do with our tax dollars, when it comes to the budget or projects or which direction we're going to move to get everybody involved. So, thank you.
Yes, given my history, the concept of me being a champion of a special interest group or a narrow perspective is laughable on the face of it. I think you'll all agree if you know me. My decision process, first of all, will never ever be based upon what's best for my chances of being elected to a second term, which, by the way, I intend to run for, because right now, intellectually and somatically, I feel like I've got a good 8 to 10 years left with no problem. As far as, thinking that I have the best idea on a particular issue before council, if in fact I'm convinced that I do, I won't be embarrassed at all about pushing that idea. And in fact, I think that I'm quite capable of bringing my argument to a successful conclusion. That's not to say that I won't, listen to the input of the other council members, but if I didn't think that I was sufficiently intelligent to come up with great ideas and so forth and great solutions to problems, then I wouldn't be running in the first place. So I'm not at all bashful about that. Regarding city ordinances, budgets, projects, etc., my master's in public administration out there didn't come out of a crackerjack box, so I'm quite academically well prepared, as is the doctor, who, by the way, has his doctorate from Valdosta State, just like I have my master's from Valdosta State in public administration. My decision process will be quite simple. I'll just look at the situation and come up with what I think is the best answer. And you should know that from way back when, in my early 20s, when I first started getting very interested in politics, I have been a William F. Buckley Jr., Ronald Reagan, and conservative, both in the fiscal and in the social sense of conservatism. So I'm not one, like for instance, I'm not a big risk taker. Had I been on council back in the day when inexperienced city manager Bill Shanahan convinced the council and mayor of that time to go ahead and build out the entire Point Peter water sewage treatment plant rather than taking the more conservative and fiscally safe option of doing it in a modular form, I would have argued against it, and I hope successfully. That's one of the reasons that our water sewer rates are so high to this day, is we're still paying for that mistake that was made back, what was that, 25 years ago, something like that, and we're still paying for it. So yeah, like I say, I don't think that I have all the answers, but I think I'm absolutely capable of coming up with some of the very best answers that will be had during my time on council, and I'm not at all bashful about saying that. Thank you.
First to address the third question will be Mr. Ingram. Whether defined by anecdotal data or official surveys, public trust in government is in decline. As a councilman, what will you do and how will you conduct yourself to earn and maintain the trust of St. Mary's citizens?
Now, it says as a councilman, but just as a person, I feel that I've always conducted myself in a respectful manner, and I feel that I've always been pretty much transparent, when speaking with almost anyone. I feel that, I try to be personable. I try to, get along and work well with just about anyone. It doesn't mean that, we don't all have our times, but I will definitely conduct myself with the utmost of character as I can possibly do. And as far as, to maintain the trust of St. Mary's citizens, that just goes back to what we've been discussing now the last previous two questions, is just the communication. If you have an open line of communication with everybody, there is a trust factor that can be established there and maintained. As long as you're being transparent and you shoot somebody straight, that's about all you can do. Now, not everybody's going to like the answer you give every time you give it, but if you're shooting that straight answer, you can't go wrong. So, thank you.
I announced on anti-social media during the last campaign back in November that one of the things that I intended to do to establish a rapport and a trust with the citizenry is that every interim week between city council meetings that I would announce what restaurant I was going to hold a luncheon at, Dutch Treat of course, and invite people to come sit down at the table with me, have lunch, discuss what their concerns are, get my views on things. The late, great, the mayor of New York City, Ed Koch, was famous for doing that sort of thing. And I fully intend to do that. As far as engendering trust, I've been called a lot of things, but very rarely a liar, because I'm not one. And the very nature of being the kind of guy that speaks truth to power, irrespective of the consequences, you can't get by with that for years and lie. So I'm not a liar. I'm very truthful. And there's absolutely no reason, given the way that I would conduct myself on council, that anyone should not trust me. They might not necessarily like what I have to say or do, but as far as trust, there's just no way in the world that you're not going to trust me, because it's going to be very obvious that I'm telling the unvarnished truth, irrespective of the consequences. Thank you. I'm done.
One of the large social science surveys groups has been conducting a survey on social institutions in America for the last 30 years to see what people trust. Always at the top of that list for the last 30 years has been small business, followed by the military, followed by law enforcement. We've stayed right there at number 3, even through all the tumultuous things of the last few years. And then after, it drops off precipitously. Congress, government, those things usually rank very much toward the bottom. And it's because people have this idea that, they're just not telling us the whole truth. I think that and Mr. Marino was identifying himself with Ronald Reagan. I would do the same, as well as the way that President Trump conducted himself. I'm not sure that maybe Melania shouldn't have taken that Twitter away a little bit from time to time. But one thing that man did was he said what he was going to do, and that's exactly what he did. And people, I think, hated him for that. That is incumbent upon someone who's going to be serving in government, and that is that we do what we say we're going to do. In the foyer of this building, all of us have some tables set up out there with some things that are displayed on there, and one plaque that I chose to bring and place out there was my integrity plaque. I always kept it at eye level in my office. I'd like for you to look at it as you leave this evening. It has a picture of a pathway going into some woods, and it says that integrity is the right path because it is the one path upon which you will not get lost. And that is how we should conduct ourselves as servants in government, and I would hope to be able to do that. Thank you.
Fourth question goes to Mr. Marino to start out. Some areas of St. Mary's are at risk during high tide, king tide, intense storms, and hurricane flooding. In addition to what is in place and planned, what ideas do you have for improving city resiliency along the waterfront and elsewhere?
Thank you. I'm not only concerned about the flooding that goes on down on the waterfront, but in particular, some of our subdivisions, like out in the Crooked River area. But to address the question here, I've always kind of marveled at why is it that we can't simply go along the waterfront there downtown, like on the outer edge of the park, for instance, and simply construct a wall. I mean, we can construct a wall that's maybe 3 feet high or whatever, we determine is appropriate, and run it along the entire waterfront. I mean, it's not rocket science. The Dutch have been doing it for quite a long time. I don't know why we can't do that and why we haven't done it already. As far as clearing the water out of it, if it ever comes across, maybe we should have some billy pumps or whatever on standby, a greater number of them. But as far as the resiliency and so forth, other than physical barriers to the tides, I don't really know what else we could do. I'd be open to suggestions, but as I sit here this evening, I can't really think of anything. But getting back to the flooding situation out in Crooked River subdivision, I think it's high time, and in fact it's way past time, that the city, rather than going out there and having photo ops all holding shovels, and Ms. Williams remembers that because she was in one of those photo ops, and never actually doing anything, that's got to stop. We need to be straight with those people. We need to go out there and tell them, look, either we can fix it or we can't fix it. Don't every 2 years go out there and do a bunch of lip service about how, oh yeah, we could probably fix that if you just elect us, and then they're completely forgotten. Their ditches are not cleaned out. There's not a bloody thing that's done until the next election comes around. So if it turns out we can't do it, let's be honest about it. Let's tell them. But if we can do it, for God's sake, let's actually finally do it. Those people pay taxes just like the rest of us. Their home values may not be as high as some others, but that's irrelevant. They're still every bit as much citizens as anyone else in this town, and they should be treated equitably. And before my light turns red, I just want to piggyback on something that the doctor said here. I would encourage you all to ask yourselves this question. Given the choice between the way America was when not so nice Donald Trump was president and when oh so nice big guy Joe Biden is president, ask yourself which one you'd rather have. Thank you.
My first week here was, and I came to the city on August the 12th of 2019. The first week after I got here, Hurricane Dorian showed up. I thought it was rude to bring a hurricane to be here the first week of the brand new police chief. And I learned a lot about hurricane operations in that week that I'd never seen before. I've stood several times down at the intersection down there beside that corner store where the ice cream place is and told people to get out of the road because it is flooded, and just watch people come by in a pickup truck wanting to take a look at things and say, this is flooded, do not drive down here, leave, and we would issue some citations from time to time and that sort of thing. Aside from building additional wall space and so forth, I'm not sure what else we could do to forestall any flooding, because one thing we have down there is a marina where boats go into the water. We're certainly not going to build a wall to prohibit boats from going into the water. As long as that is there, water's going to come up right where the boats go out. So I'm not really totally sure what we can do that. My outsider's perspective is that the whole city basically is built on a marsh. My subdivision sits on a marsh, or what was, and many of the others around here do. Maybe there can be something on the front end during the construction phase of things that would improve drainage and that sort of thing. Possibly that would be something that the city could do from an ordinance standpoint. But aside from physical barriers, I'm not really sure what else we could do at this point in time.
I'm going to go back to one thing I've said a couple of times, and that's council members shouldn't have every answer and shouldn't pretend to. And I think that, you know, that's kind of what Mr. Wilkie just said, and Mr. Marino for that matter. You know, yes, a seawall's, you know, an obvious, you know, answer that everybody knows a seawall exists. But, you know, you can't just go building a seawall. You know, you got to see, you know, if you put a seawall in this location, is that going to, you know, cause a problem for somebody else? Which we've kind of seen that, because I'm quite certain that until the downtown park to what it is now was built, that, you know, before that seawall got built up, we didn't have flooding over by, you know, where 401 West building is. And now the, you know, water does come up and go across 3rd in that location, which it used to not do to the level that it does now. So you've got to, you know, not make the problem here turn into somebody else's problem over here. So that's definitely a big thing. And, you know, I don't think anybody on this stage right here has, you know, seen any engineer reports or, you know, got all the data in front of them, so we can't give that real answer. But what we can do is look for it. And if there is an answer that's something that's, you know, feasible, then let's see what we can do to get it done if it makes sense financially. But, you know, Mother Nature's undefeated. We're on the coast. It's not a problem that's native to just St. Mary's. You know, it happens, you know, every coastal town. I mean, like, they have these problems. Now, some have different situations than ours. You know, like, we're different than somewhere in Charleston or wherever place is on the water that you want to use as an example. We're different. But, you know, if we can do something, I absolutely want to see it. And you know, we you know, a seawall is an answer. There's natural barriers. There's natural vegetation that can help keep water down. You know, if that's something that can be done at a reasonable cost and actually get some type of results. But end of the day, you know, you do have a lot of people whose homes are affected. We need to help them if we can and shoot them straight if there's nothing that can be done. I mean, and that's not what somebody wants to hear, but you just at least shoot them straight so that, you know, someone doesn't show up and say, hey, yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and nothing happens, because realistically, it might not be able to happen. But if it is, you know, let's see what we can do. So, thank you.
What are we on? Question?
Fifth question starts with Dr. Wilkie. If a matter comes before council that you have strong feelings about, but learn that the majority of residents disagree with you and make a strong case for their view, how would you vote?
I don't think that there's any question about that. You vote as the citizens direct you, because you are their elected representative. If you're not going to represent their views, shut up, resign, get out of the way, or whatever else you need to do. Our government is built on the concept of we the people. Next week, I will be teaching a legal liability class for law enforcement officers up in the city of Savannah. It's part of the Georgia Command College program. We will be there for about 4.5 days, and I'm spending all of next Monday morning to talk about the background and history of the Constitution of the United States. We don't get that in law enforcement training, and I don't know what they've had about it or not. So I intend to spend the first part of our morning learning something about how we got that Constitution. It is built on the concept of we the people. There were some of the founders of our country that wanted to say we the states or we the government, but it prevailed that it begins we the people, and that's the way that it should be. I'll use the spaceport, for example. I had no particular strong feelings either way about the spaceport. I'm not sure that I saw that as a St. Mary's issue particularly. But I know one thing: when you've got 70-something% of the people in the community that vote against it, that means you better not be doing it. And And, that needs to pass on by the wayside, at least until something is resolved on those sorts of things. I'm not there to represent my views. I'm there to represent the views of the citizens in the community. And if you can't do that, then you need to get out of the way and let someone else take that job.
So we do have a county commissioner in the room, so if y'all want to go talk about spaceport, I'm totally kidding. So I've kind of already, addressed that as well, that, my opinion might not be the will of the people or majority opinion. And, if my mind went a certain direction on something, I have no problem going the other way with it. As far as, what we've discussed, open communication, and if I realize that I've got something in my mind that I feel like I have an opinion on a certain topic or subject, and it seems that the will of the people is a different decision, then I have to vote for that decision. And if it seems to be a tie 50-50, well then, why, of course, y'all get my wife's opinion on it. I'm kidding on that one too. No, I mean, if I keep talking, it's just going to say the same thing over and over, that yes, I have no problem voting with what the majority would want to go for our town. So, thank you. I think it stays right here now. That was
I've not yet answered
Oh.
that.
Never mind.
Okay.
I thought we were done. Sorry. You definitely get a chance to talk.
Thank you. Right. Okay,
That's y'all up.
no problem. I would have an excuse for that at 75, but at 44. Yeah. Okay, we're ready to go. All right. Let me say this. We are in fact a representative democracy. We're not a direct democracy. And I can't sit here and tell you that there might never come a time when, given the premise of this question, that I might not vote against the majority opinion of the residents. Now, on the other hand, if they've got a strong case, which is the premise here, if it's strong enough and they convince me that my position is incorrect, I'll certainly change my position. But to just sit here and say that there would never ever come a time when I would vote against the majority, that would be totally disingenuous, because that could in fact happen. And I think that it's the responsible position to take. And by the way, speaking of people that have been deeply involved in local politics, glad to see Dr. Jim Burnham here this evening. Haven't seen you in a while, Jim. But anyway, that's my answer there. I do in fact, would in fact, pay attention to what the people have to say when they come up to the podium, or whether they connect with me during these luncheons I propose or whatever. But to just sit here and say I would never ever vote my conviction if it ran contrary to the majority, I'm not prepared to say that. Okay.
Now we get back this time. It really is, man.
We'll start with Mr. Ingram on the 6th question. The city's 10-year master plan is at the halfway mark. What will you do and champion to help refresh, extend, and improve the plan for our city's future?
So, as far as refreshing and championing our city's master plan, I believe in, not just the city, but in anything you do. And let's just say it's your personal business, or, whatever decisions you make in life, you need to make scalable decisions. So, you don't want to make decisions that are, a short-term decision, or a decision that's going to kick the can down the road, so the next group of guys have to figure it out, to make sure the decisions that you're making are something that, fits you for the now, but also for the long term. So I do want to make sure that, when we're deciding on, projects that we have, any developments we have going on, that we're, you know, making the decisions that are scalable, that we don't have to, you know, redo something down the road in a short period of time. Also, hang on, I lost my train of thought there. As far as the I think I'm having another brain fart at 44 here. I was in the middle of a dead heat. But I thank you, Jay. And then as far as you know, the extending, refreshing and extending the plan, that we have to make sure that we're doing it fiscally responsible. That's definitely very important, to be fiscally responsible and not putting ourselves in huge debt when it's not necessary. You know, we're in the middle of a lot of big projects, and we have a lot of things that are, you know, taking place, and there are a lot of things we can only do once. You know, once you decide to go in and develop a piece of property, and, you know, it could involve, you know, millions of dollars, which several of them are, you can't go back and get a do-over. You know, that's going to happen, and that's what it's going to be there. So it has to be what is in the best interest of St. Mary's as far as giving us that you know, increased taxpayer base, as far as bringing tax dollars into the city without having to raise taxes on, you know, the citizens that we have. You know, we just saw a big increase in our trash collection service. You know, and, you know, I have my opinions on that, just as we all do, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now. But and just making the scalable decisions and making sure they're the most financially responsible decisions for the town and city, and just, you know, going in and reviewing everything that we have working in the immediate and near future.
I pretty much subscribe to everything that Chad just said, but I would add that, as I say, I've been watching city council for 30 years now, and somewhere in our dilapidated city hall that's in dire need of replacement, but is nowhere in the master plan, by the way, there's probably a shelf back there that's had to be reinforced over the years with 4x4s to keep it from breaking under the weight of all the prior 5-year, 10-year plans. They sit there, they collect dust, they get changed, they never actually get completed. They're pretty much a farce and a boon for highly paid consultants. So I'm not going to make much in the way of comments on the existing master plan until I'm in office and get a chance to actually read it from, you know, cover to cover. But getting back to my comment about a city hall, I've been bugging the current mayor and council ever since I realized that they could buy the old Express Scripts building, over 90,000 square feet, for only $20 a square foot. If you double that for the expense of remodeling the inside, you're talking $40 a square foot. My God, the city thinks my little 1,500 square foot house is worth, what, $140, $50 a square foot? By the way, that property comes with a considerable number of parking places as well. So you could accommodate every single department of this city, including the police station, and maybe not the fire stations, obviously, in that one building with plenty of room for future growth. I have a sneaking suspicion that there's actually a plan afoot to build a new city hall. Guess where? Exit 1 in Wild Lake 2.0. Well, isn't that just going to be real convenient and centrally located? So, you know, we've got things that need to be done, but we're doing all these grandiose 10-year plans that, like I say, there's just dozens of them sitting on a shelf somewhere. So I don't put a whole lot of stock in the 10-year plan. I mean, when I'm on council, naturally I'll read it from cover to cover, and, you know, what's good in it, I'll be a champion of it, but what's not so good I won't. And I just will not be at all surprised if the biggest part of it never comes to fruition. And by the way, in the 10-year plan, were we all aware of the fact that they were in cahoots with Radiant until they've been at it for 2 years? And by the way, and I'll get to this when I get my green light on the next question, what they did in executive session was an absolute violation of Georgia law. when it comes to, I see I'm still green, when it comes to having executive sessions related to real estate, okay, I'm sorry. We'll get back to that.
I'll yield some minutes to you to finish.
Okay, so we're done.
I think I'm to question 6 now. As to the Scripps building, the city attempted to purchase that building. The reason that we were unsuccessful in proceeding with that purchase is that the owner gets a fee, and it's like $180,000 a year for some sort of service that happens out there, and he was unwilling to waive that fee for the sale of that property to the city, and the city was unwilling to pay him $180,000 a year. So, or whatever that number was. I'm rounding the number because I don't exactly remember it, but that's what happened. We all thought we were headed that way, and then that came along. Refresh, extend, improve the plan for our city's future on the 10-year plan. Having been on the inside of that, most of our 5-year and 10-year plans are merely cuts, copies, and paste from something that was done in the previous year with a little language added and no particular intent to see it through. I submitted those things for my departments, and they basically didn't change because we were looking at goals rather than projects. Some of the other departments, might have been after a particular project or so. But I think probably as much as anything else, our city just needs to have some plan in place to maintain what we have, okay? The other night at City Council, they attempted to give away the aquatics park to the PSA. Are you aware of this? The aquatics park right down the road from us, motion was presented to give that away to the PSA. Thank you to Councilman Alan Rassi for standing up and saying, nah, we've done a little too much of this. Let's put a pause on this and see what we can do. The reason the city wanted to give it away is because they've been doing no maintenance on that facility for decades. And before, really before it could continue on in service, something needs to be done to fix it. That's the sort of thing that needs to go into a 10-year plan. We've got an aging sewer and water system out here. We're going to have to do some replacement on that pretty soon and build some other things. So the 10-year plans need to be realistic. They need to be goal-oriented. They need to be project-oriented. They need to be planned in their funding. And I'm sure eventually we're going to get around to the Radiant project so we can talk about that funding for that. So thank you.
Mr. Marino gets the first crack at question number 7. If elected, what expertise will you add to the city council, and why is this important to the voters?
What expertise? Well, it has always been the case that city council people and mayoral candidates have come from an exceedingly diverse background in terms of expertise and germane experience and so forth. I made a mistake after being goaded into it some years ago of fessing up to the fact that I'm a member of both Mensa and the 999 Society and was properly excoriated for telling everybody that I was so much smarter than everyone else. It's a genetic fact. It's nothing that I did that I can take credit for. But at any rate, to help convince people that other than being highly intelligent and capable of handling the position, I subsequently went and got from College of Coastal Georgia a bachelor's degree in public management. Somewhere in there I knocked out a BBA, and then I finally got a master's in public administration with, as Dr. Wilkie can attest, that program at Valdosta State is designed specifically for city and county managers. And I completed that course with like a 3.96 because some ultra-liberal professor wouldn't cut me some slack when my computer would crap out, but that's another story. But at any rate, no. Yeah, I bet we know who we were talking about. But at any rate, I'm simply know in my heart of hearts and in my mind that I'm absolutely qualified as anyone. You know, I could say, well, you know, I was the chief petty officer in the Navy, which I was, and, you know, I was the leading chief of a large group of medics and so forth. But I don't really have any expertise that I can point to and say, well, gee, you know, I did this thing that was on-the-job training to be a city councilman. And I don't know that there really is such a thing. Just trust me when I tell you that I'm up to the task. You make me prove that by electing me, and you'll see that I'm, in fact, quite accurate on that. Okay, so where are we? Question 7.
Me? I guess it's me, okay. I jokingly said I think we might have had some of those same professors, Mr. Marino. One of mine was, we called him Dr. A for a reason. There was another one, we called him Dr. B for a reason. And so those are interesting experiences. I have over 30 years of service in local law enforcement and in local government. For the last 20 years, I have served as a chief of police in 3 different cities of similar, well, counting this one, of similar size and nature to the city of St. Mary's. That brings an outsider's perspective, and it also brings a lot of experience to the table. I know what the city's budget process is. I know what our personnel is. I know what gets talked about in city staff meetings, things that you never hear. I knew about the Sparkle project long before you did. Not all the ins and outs of it, but a lot of those things. So there's very little about the operation of the city to which I have not already been exposed. I know what questions to ask too. And I don't mind asking hard questions. Sometimes that gets you in trouble with people when you ask some hard and pointed questions, and when you try to hold people accountable for things that they do and say, that sometimes gets a little thorny. But that's the sort of thing that needs to be happening in our city. That happens because we're sitting there to represent you and to protect the interests of our city. And the 2 biggest things that we need to be protecting for this city are, number one, it's liability against, lawsuits for inappropriate things or whatever. And number 2, to protect the assets of our city, okay? We live and exist on public money. We live and exist on the property taxes that are collected when you pay them. We live and exist on the grant proposals that are come through. We live and exist on SPLOST money, which is, again, a local option sales tax. Those things are public money. We are supposed to be publicly accountable for those things and give you a good report on every nickel and dime that we're doing. And I've got a pretty good idea of where those things sit right now, and I won't have to ask a lot of questions.
So, as far as expertise, that would be added to council, now I'm sure that a skill set pretty much throughout time that anybody could bring to council has been there before, but as far as what I personally bring to the table is a lot of life experience. And I've been in, obviously, my industry has been sales, but it's been in a lot of different companies and a lot of different, types of, avenues or products. In doing that, it's not just me doing direct sales to the customer. A lot of the times it's also with, my team and team members and making those decisions to help grow our brand. And that, has been, from locally to regionally to the whole Southeast to a national sales coordinator position. And I've been able to attract enough people that want to go out there and push our message and brand, to grow and do it in multiple areas and markets, and then, also to position, the products, to our customers. So, one of the, one thing I'll point out, and I want to get totally on my background or history, I joined the, ADT. Everybody knows that for home security, and I joined a small dealership. Well, they were about 25th on the ADT list, and, when I left, we were, number 3 on the list. So it was a very successful point where, that takes a lot of people to bring together to accomplish that goal and move forward with that. One last thing is, that I'll say is that, with that, it gives, I feel that I've made, been well at assessing situations and having decision-making skills. And I recognize that, we can promise up here that we'll do, this or do that for council or for the city. And, sometimes we can't do that because I do recognize that, if any of my ideas get passed, I've got to get 3 other council members to join me. You can't just have, a good idea on your own. You've got to be able to, get 3 other people at this point to get it done. So, you'll either have to work well with others, get other council members to reach a consensus or a compromise for your ideas that you have. And that's just the way it works. So I do think that I can get into that type of arena and, get things done for the city. So thank you.
We are out of time for questions. So we will move now to the closing statements, continuing the same rotation, which means Dr. Wilkie is up first.
Well, first I'd like to thank Three Rivers Church for opening their facility for us this evening and providing a public forum. I'd like to thank Mr. Tom Canning, who really was doing the yeoman's work behind the scenes to make this happen. And very underappreciated. So, Mr. Canning, thank you so much for what you did. Jeannie, thank you for keeping time. And for all of you who have come to listen to our discussions this evening. This is an important decision because whoever sits in that seat is going to be making decisions that are going to affect our city for decades to come. This vote, this special election in less than 30 days is not likely to draw a lot of voters to the polls, which is a sad thing, but it's not likely to do so. It may not be 1,500 people hardly that even vote in this coming election. But those who come, those who will come, I hope that you're engaged in the process and that you've listened to what we've had to say this evening. I have emphasized already my experience of working with the city and then my educational background, which has been good knowledge preparation to continue in this service. Having sat up here on this platform with these 2 other gentlemen, I'm sitting here thinking, wish all 3 of us could get in there and have something to do. Mr. Marino, it'd be interesting to see you come in there and shake things up as you have noted. And I wish that there were a way that all 3 of us could continue to serve you. Unfortunately, that is not the case. So I thank you for the opportunity. I've made myself available for questions and so forth, and I would like to ask you for your vote and support when we have the election on March the 21st. Early voting starts next Monday at the St. Mary's Visitor Center, so remember that as well, please. Thank you so much.
In terms of thank yous, I certainly want to echo everything that Dr. Wilkie just said. I want to thank the folks that put this on. I'm sure there was quite a bit of work involved in arranging all of this, and it's much appreciated. Obviously, I appreciate the, unfortunately, small number of you who turned out this evening. I wish it had been 3 or 4 times this many people. But, you guys are the kind of citizens that we need that are truly interested in what's going on. Going back to that question about expertise and so forth, at some point, I'm not sure exactly when, but our man from the Tribune in Georgia can probably tell us, all of us candidates were given a questionnaire, a rather extensive questionnaire for an edition they're going to have before the election, which will give all of our backgrounds and so forth. And you'll see that I have a very eclectic work history from 20 years in multi-lines insurance sales and sales management, heavy equipment operator, international tractor trailer driver, just a whole plethora of things. And at the time that I ate some bad food, believe it or not, which put me in this wheelchair 18 years ago, I was working as a traveling salesman and demonstrator for a company out of Brunswick called Cut Quick, which makes the world's finest slope mowers that weigh about 3,000 pounds and will cut on the side of a hill at up to a 45-degree angle while keeping the driver sitting bolt upright on a gimbal without falling over. And believe it or not, I ate some bad food, came down with something called Guillain-Barré, and that's why I'm in a wheelchair. But I have a very eclectic experience, which you will be able to see in the newspaper. Again, I think that I echo Dr. Wilkie's comments that I think any of the three of us here would serve the public quite well. I've also made the comment, you've seen it in the paper, that I would, were I not in the race, I would certainly consider voting for young Chad here. I hope to vote for him in 2024 when I'm sitting on the dais up there, because I think he and I would work very well together. And if you think about it, if you put me in the office now and I serve 8 years, there'll be 6 years that he and I will be sitting behind the dais, maybe, you know, working synergistically with each other. So I hope you all will give some thought to strategy there. We don't see an awful lot of strategy, unfortunately, in our voters. Anyway, that's pretty much it. Thank you.
I'd like to start off and thank again for everybody for coming out and you know, coming to see what we have to offer. You know, and like Mr. Wilkie already did, and I'll say Dr. Wilkie. I know I've always said Mr. Wilkie. I apologize if it's offensive, but it's Mike already said. You know, thanks to Three Rivers, this is a big production for a few people to attend. Hopefully, we get a lot of viewership online. As far as voter turnout, that's going to be the biggest, one of the biggest challenges here. And obviously, I hope everybody in this room is going to vote. I think you will, since you took the time to come here. But it's not about just you voting. We need to make sure that you get your family members to vote, your neighbors, your friends, everybody. Just make sure that you ask them, did you vote? Did you vote? Did you vote? Just so we can get a true, feel for what the people really want as far as which direction we're going to go with this thing. We do have a lot of good candidates here, and I wish everybody could get in, but unfortunately it doesn't work that way. But I would hate to see a decision made with such a few amount of people. We're actually paying for this election. It's not a state election that's going to get refunded by the state, so this actually is a very costly event that we're having, so we're going to pay for it regardless if you take advantage of it or not. So you might as well go ahead and take advantage of it and make sure everybody else does as well. And all that being said, when you do go vote, of course, I'm going to ask you to please vote for Chad Ingram when you do show up in the booth. But if you don't, no hard feelings. I know that everybody thinks differently. Also, guys, if you noticed, I've put up some signs. I got some new updated signs, and they have the election dates on them. Don't know if that's a smart move or not, but I just figured that most people don't even know there's an election coming. At least if they see something sitting there, and I got flags waving and everything else, that actually say the election dates. So, if somebody asks you, just say, hey, look at one of those signs. And it's got it spelled out for you, So, and if you would like one of those for your home, golf cart, car, I got flags and signs for anybody that would like one in the back. So, again, thank you for coming out. Please vote for Chad Ingram, and come see me and talk to me afterwards if you'd like to. Thank you.
At the risk of being redundant, I want to thank all the members of Three Rivers Church for allowing us to use their facility this evening. Thanks go out to Jeannie Strait, our timekeeper, Linda Williams and Ken Jelly, who were the audience assistance team, Tom Canning for video recording this forum, and as Dr. Wilkie said, was really the ramrod and the brains and the sweat behind this entire event.
And thank you to Chris Turner for being the MC for OSCC2.
Thank you. But the The video of this event will be posted on the Camden Votes website. Another thing I want to mention, I think Dr. Wilkie mentioned the questions to the candidates given by the Tribune and Georgian. The issue of the T&G with their answers to those questions is on the table right outside that back doors, and there's enough there, it looks like, for everybody in the room to take one. So please take advantage of that. And going back to the thank you to these three guys for submitting to what they had to go through tonight, being blindsided with all the questions, and also just for being willing to step up to run for city council. I think it's pretty clear from all three of them that they have a servant's heart, that they have the best interest, our best interest of the city of St. Mary's in mind. And last of all, thank you to you folks, all of y'all, for coming, for showing your interest, for participating in our experiment in government. And as I think Mr. Marino mentioned, early voting starts Monday at the Welcome Center or Visitor Center. And we have to clear this facility by 8 p.m., which means we have, what, about 30, 40 minutes to chat with each other, talk to the candidates. Again, thanks for everything. Good night.